Vanwilligan says some have argued that professional athletes receive unfairly high salaries. Okay, so like every old man, looks at the contract. Oh my God, Ohtani's making $700 million. That's so unfair. And it's like, okay, yeah, but the Dodgers are worth like billions and billions of dollars. So some have made this argument. But in an unrestricted free market, such as the market these athletes compete in, salaries are determined by what someone else is willing to pay for their services. Of course, we could have a side conversation about whether this is truly an unrestricted free market, because the leagues do conspire, don't they, with salary caps and etc. It's actually not really a free market. I mean, probably these athletes would make more money if they really did have free agency. Anyway, Vanwilligan seems to think that these athletes are in an actual free market. So it's just, that's what they're willing to pay. These athletes make enormous profits for their team's owners, which I think we all know in real life is true. And that is why owners are willing to pay them extraordinary salaries, which I think we all know in real life is true. But now they reach their conclusion, and my job is not to agree with conclusions. My job on the LSAT is to disagree with every conclusion that is made, unless the evidence proves it. And the conclusion here is, thus the salaries they receive are fair. But they never defined fairness. They do not have a premise in this argument that says, if the owners are willing to pay it, then it's fair. Or if we're looking at an unrestricted free market and someone's willing to pay it, then it's fair. That definition, fairness, was never in evidence, only in the conclusion. So as much as I want to argue with every old man who says, oh, it's not fair, that's, it's ridiculous how much money they make. And I agree that it actually is fair and they probably should be paid more. I want to agree with that, but that's my job. If I want to get the question right, I have to interfere. I have to find the thing that's going to get in the way of, okay, here's your evidence, here's your conclusion. I'm going to tell you why your conclusion doesn't necessarily follow from your facts. My objection here is, what the fuck is fair? Where did fair come from? What? You didn't provide any definition of what's fair. You're just assuming that it's fair because of a bunch of facts that you gave, but the facts don't say anything about fairness, so how could they prove that it's fair? Vanwilligan's conclusion follows logically if which one of the following is assumed. That question is asking me to prove Vanwilligan's conclusion. It's a sufficient assumption question. Sufficient assumption questions are easy because they are predictable. How do I force this conclusion to be true? Well, what's the problem with the argument? The problem with the argument is that they bring up fairness in their conclusion, and they never mentioned fairness in any of their facts. So the correct answer here absolutely has to say something about fairness. And what it's going to do is it's going to take us from the facts we have, which is unrestricted free market, owners are willing to pay, to the conclusion that we want, which is therefore fair. So the correct answer could just say, if you're in an unrestricted free market, then every salary is fair. It could also say, if the owners are willing to pay it, then it's fair. A, the fairest economic system for a society. I'm not even going to read the rest of that. I want something that applies to contracts in an unrestricted free market. I don't care what is a fair economic system for society. I want a definition of fairness that says, if you're in an unrestricted free market. So, if I eliminate B, C, D, E, I might end up coming back to A, but I know that A is wrong 80% of the time. So I read the first little bit of it and I go, yeah, that's not the kind of definition that I was looking for fairness. I can just say, probably not A, probably never come back to it unless I can eliminate all four of these other answers. B, if professional athletes were paid less, I might stop reading that one right there. What? Like counterfactually, if they were paid a different price than something else? Yeah, why do I need to read the rest of that? Again, I'm looking for a bridge from the facts that we have to the conclusion that we want. C, the high level of competition in the marketplace forces the team's owners to pay these high salaries. Who cares? Doesn't mention fairness, can't be the correct answer. D, any salary that a team owner is willing to pay, here we go, for the services of a professional athlete is a fair salary. Hopefully some of you, if I could get an amen in the chat, I would really appreciate it. Hopefully some of you are starting to predict these answers on sufficient assumption questions. Like, you brought up new shit in your conclusion, Vanwilligan. You're not allowed to bring up new shit in your conclusion. And if they say, okay, but you're Vanwilligan's attorney and you need to prove Vanwilligan's conclusion, okay, well, then it has to say, if the facts are true, then the conclusion is true, and the conclusion is about fairness. D is perfectly predictable, and it's the answer. E, if a professional athlete's salary is fair, well, I know that that's wrong. Let me take a little more time to explain why. E, at best, is going to be confusing sufficient for necessary. I'm trying to prove fairness. E says, if it's fair, then here's some other shit that would happen. But what if it's not fair to begin with? So I really don't need to read the rest of E to know that it's wrong. There's no way that it can be right after that comma. Yes, L, it would be confusing the causal arrow, although we don't diagram conditional reasoning here. Your life will be easy. You'll be better off, trust me, if you don't diagram. Okay. It's just not the best way to solve these questions. I used to teach diagramming, so please trust me. For, 5, 7, 8 years of my career teaching LSAT, I had a whiteboard and I was always doing the diagramming of conditional arrows because that's how I had learned it. But it's also just common sense. We're trying to prove fairness. E says, if it's fair, then here's what happens. I want, if so-and-so happens, then it's fair. And that's just not what E is doing. Answer here is going to be D.